Yo, what's up everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to take your wash effects from this to this. Now I've got the Chauvet Wash Fx 2 and I'm starting to transition over to having an all white setup. Unfortunately, the Chauvet Wash Fx does not come in white from the factory, so I started thinking about ways that I could get a white version. I figured to try spray painting them, and honestly it worked out pretty well. I know there are a lot of people on YouTube that have the Chauvet Wash Fx, so I wanted to make this video in case it helps somebody else out there. Now a couple things to keep in mind. One is that I have the Chauvet Wash Fx 2, and actually I have two different versions of the Chauvet Wash Fx 2, and I didn't even realize it until I started spray painting them. So if you have the regular Chauvet Wash Fx, or if you have the Hex, it might be a little bit different, but in general I think it should be pretty much the same. We are going to be opening these up to work on them, so definitely be safe and use your best judgment. This isn't something direct from Chauvet itself, so you will void any warranties, and you can risk damaging the light itself, so just be aware of that. Here's a closer side by side with the original Wash Fx 2 and the one that I spray painted white. You can see there's some parts that I still have to redo on the spray painted white version, but overall it looks pretty clean. Here's another view from the side. I actually just noticed that I have two different versions of the Wash Fx 2. One version of the Wash Fx 2 that I have has this built-in grill, and this other one has this silver metal grill that goes on top. The way to spray paint both these is still basically the same. One thing you will notice though, that with this spray painting method that I had, the back does stay black. The reason is because the back has all of these inputs and outputs and the screen, and I didn't want to individually spray paint over that or paint it by hand. And since it's on the back, I figured it wouldn't be seen that well anyways. So next, let's get into how to actually go about doing this. So to start off, here are all the basic things you'll need for this job. First of all, you'll need some kind of a spray paint. Now I decided to go with this brand, Rust-Oleum. I got it from Home Depot. The reason I picked this one is because it's a paint and a primer, and this one has kind of a flat finish, so that means it doesn't shine. Now that's totally up to you. If you want yours to have more of a gloss appearance, you can definitely buy that one. But in this video, I use the flat look, but that's totally personal preference. The next thing you'll need is a roll of painter's tape. I'll show you how to use this next. You'll also need a screwdriver or a drill to get all the screws off on the Wash Fx. And then you'll need some old newspaper or plastic wrap just to mask off some of the areas on the Wash Fx as you spray paint them. So the first thing you're gonna do is take the Wash Fx and then tape off the areas that we don't wanna spray paint. We're gonna have to do this in about 3 or 4 different steps in terms of the spray painting. For this first round of spray painting, the parts that I don't wanna spray are the back, like I showed at the beginning, and then also these fan ports here. We're gonna have to tape those off so that any spray paint doesn't get into the unit itself. I'm also gonna cover this for now, and then we're gonna do the front in another step. This is probably gonna be the most time involved step. So first, I'm gonna get started by taping off the back. Now what I found works best is to get the tape as close as possible to the edge, but don't put it on this top part here. Keep it just on the back panel itself. And then we'll cut around this extra tape to fit this sort of octagon shape that they have here in the back. We'll keep going for now. All right, so I've put down the base layer of tape. We still have some more to do to cover up the rest of the back here, but just to give you guys a closer look here. So the way you want to tape this first layer is you just want the tape to stay on this back layer. You don't want it to get onto the other panels. That way, when you spray paint, you'll get full coverage on the rest of the panels here, all the way up to the edge, but it won't make it onto the actual back panel itself. I have some extra tape here. I'm just gonna take a blade and just cut that off here next. So now I've cut off the extra tape, and you can see that it's nice and flush just with the back panel. I don't have the tape overlying any of the other panels there, except for that one back panel. Next up, I'm gonna use some of the newspaper that I have just to cover up the rest of the area so that when I spray paint, none of the paint gets on these important components. I'm just gonna take this little piece of newspaper. Alrighty, now you can see that I've got the back totally taped up. You could also just use the painter's tape over this back part. It's just up to you. You just want to tape this part completely off so that when you're spray painting it, you can make sure none of it gets here on the back. Now the next part is we got to tape off the side fan vents so that when we're spray painting, none of it gets inside to the important components of the Wash Fx. To be able to do this properly, we got to remove these screws on the fans and then also open up the unit itself. First, I'm going to start by unscrewing this top piece, and that'll give me access to all the inside components. So it's a total of 9 screws to get this top plate off. Now when you remove it, there's a ground wire here, so don't just pull this thing completely off. I just leave it attached, but if you want, you could remove that to give you easier access. Now this is what the inside of the Wash Fx looks like. You can see on the right and the left, we have those fans that we need to remove in order to tape off the inside. So next, I'm going to be removing these 4 outside screws on either side so that the fans come off inside. You could do this first before removing the top if you think that's easier. Alright, now I'm going to set these and the 4 screws aside. Once you remove the screws, the fans just kind of hang out. I just let it kind of hang out inside the unit itself. Next, what we're going to do is tape this area off. I'm going to bring you a little bit closer so you can see from the inside what I mean. So here's a look inside the Wash Fx. You can see that you got this big hole here and the fan is kind of just hanging out inside now. Now what I'm going to do is attach the tape here on the inside so that from the outside you get a nice clean flush look when you spray paint it. Now just for reference, like I was saying, I have 2 different versions of the Wash Fx 2, which I didn't even know existed. But basically you do the same thing here. You just tape it from the inside the same way, and then you'll be able to spray paint that metal grill along with the rest of the unit. Because this other version I have is silver, I'm just gonna keep it silver. I think silver and white looks cool. But you could also spray paint that if you leave that on as well. So here we go, I'm gonna take a piece of tape, and I wanna make sure I line it up and get the screw holes covered as well. Now I'm gonna do that until the hole is completely filled with tape. Now I've created kind of a wall of tape from the inside so that when I'm spray painting, nothing can get in. Awesome, now I'm going to flip it around, do the same thing with the other fan vent. Alright, now I've got a wall of tape covering both of the fans and the back. Okay, now we've got all the screws back, we've reattached this guy completely, and we've taped off 2 of the 3 sections that I need to. The next part, I'm going to tape off the front, and then we're going to come back and spray paint this part later. Now for taping off the front, I kind of want to use the same principle I did for the back, where I want to keep the tape on the front panel itself as close to the edge, but I don't want to go onto the other panels on the Wash Fx. That way when I take off the paint, it will be a nice clean edge. Now that I got the first layer of tape on, I'm going to do the same thing and cut the edges so it's nice and flush. Alright, now here's how the edges look. If it's not perfect, it's not that important because we are going to be spray painting this front panel white as well. You just want it to be as straight as you can, but if you miss some edges, like see over here, don't worry about it because this one doesn't need to be perfect. Next, I'm just going to cover up the rest of the front. Alright, so we're done taping the edges for the front. Again, for this one, the really important part is you don't want to be covering up any of the edges with the tape. So you can see here, if you do go over the edge and you involve this black part, just cut that part of the tape off, just so that that part stays clear. Alrighty, now for round 1, we've got the parts that we need to taped off, and let's get to spray painting next. Now we're outside and I've got some cardboard down to help prevent some overspray. We're gonna spray paint this thing next. Alrighty, so that's round 1 of the spray painting. You wanna make sure you get enough on there, but if you don't get everything, don't worry, because we are gonna be doing a second round to get the bottom. You just have to make sure that you wait for it all to harden before you do the next round. I made the mistake on my first one of not waiting enough time, and then now I have to repaint. But you can see I tried my best to get all the edges, and if there's anything I missed, I'll get it again in the second round. But now we're gonna let it sit out here for at least 24 hours for everything to harden, and then we'll do round 2 of painting next. Okay, now we're all done with the spray painting, and I've waited a few extra days to make sure that the paint is all hardened. This is the first one that I did. And you can see on the bottom that I rushed a little bit and I didn't let all the paint dry before proceeding to the next step. And so it got a little scuffed up and the paint chipped off. So this time for the second one, I made sure I waited plenty of time so that all the paint hardened and it wouldn't chip off during this next step. So the first thing we have to do is go ahead and remove all the painter's tape that we used on the front and the back. Now that we got all the painter's tape off, you can see that the front and the back are completely unaffected by the paint. And you can see on the back, there's a little bit border of white, but it's okay because this part is going to be towards the back and facing away from the audience. On the front, like I had mentioned, the most critical part is you just want these plates on the side to get the paint all the way up to the edges. It's okay if we have some paint on the black part on the front because we're going to be spray painting this front plate completely separately, and that's going to get covered by any paint. The main critical part is just making sure that you get paint on all these edges here so that you have a nice white finish at the end. The next step is going to be removing this front plate. Now for this, there are a bunch of screws, and I highly recommend using a screwdriver for this instead of a drill, because what happened to me last time is I actually broke one of the screws trying to do it faster with a drill. So just do it with a screwdriver, go nice and slow. I'm actually going to start off first with these front screws, because that'll let all of the lights get detached from the front plate. Also, this IR unit will come off. And then I'm gonna get all the screws around the edges to get the rest of the faceplate off. There are gonna be 3 screws on the top that we have to remove. We have to remove all these screws here on the front plate. On the bottom, there's 3 more screws that we have to remove, as well as on the sides, there's 2 each. So there are a bunch of screws on this thing, but you don't want to use a drill, especially on the faceplate, because that's where I had broken one of the screws on the other unit that I did. So here we go, we're gonna get this thing taken off now. Now just real quick to show you guys, what'll happen as you remove these screws is that the light will just fall backwards into the unit. Don't worry about that. We're just gonna leave them there. We're gonna leave them inside the unit once we take the faceplate off, and we'll be able to reattach them later at the end. All right, now we got most of the screws off. There's one of them that's kind of stuck here, so we're gonna troubleshoot that one a little bit later. But now I'm gonna get the rest of the faceplate off by removing all of these edge outer screws. Now again, there's 3 on the top, 2 on each side, and 3 on the bottom. Okay, now we got most of the screws off. We just have this one that's kind of stuck that I have to troubleshoot. So we'll get that off next, and then we can remove the faceplate. All right, let me just bring you guys a bit closer to show you what happened here and how you can fix it if it happens to you. Okay, so here's a closer look now at the Wash Fx disassembled. Each of these lights have these gold screws in them, which are actually what the little screws go into. So what happened here on this one is that I just unscrewed that gold screw while trying to unscrew the little screw. So all I have to do now is just separate this little screw from the gold one and then screw that gold one back on right there. Looks like I just need to grab some pliers to hold this to get the screw out of it. I'm holding the gold screw with the pliers on one hand, and then I'm just going to unscrew it with the other. All right, there you go. I was able to get the gold screw out from the little screw. Okay, now I'm going to insert this gold screw back into its spot here. I don't know if I'll be able to do this with one hand. So I'm just going to screw that in a bit tighter. And then the other thing I wanted to show you guys is if you see these lenses fall off, it's no big deal at all. These actually come off really easily. You can see you can just pull them off. So all you have to do if your lenses fall off is you literally just take one of them and you want to put it in the correct orientation as all the circuits are. And then you literally just push it back on. So some of these will definitely pop off while you're doing this, and if they do, don't worry at all. Pop them back on before you install it and you'll be good to go. Now you may also notice that we do have the tape on from where we removed the fans. I'm actually gonna leave that on for right now, but don't worry, there's a step coming up where we'll put it all back to normal. Okay, so now that we've completely disconnected the faceplate, we're gonna go ahead and just spray paint this whole thing. Okay, we're back outside now to spray paint the rest of the faceplate. The nice part about this step is that there's no taping involved because we're just gonna be spray painting this thing directly. So here we go. So that's how it looks when it's all done. You just wanna make sure you get all the edges, especially because you might have some overlap from when we had taped it off. Make sure you got all the edges nice and white, and then I'm gonna wait for this to dry and then install it back on. Now the faceplate is done drying and it's time to install it back onto the Wash Fx. So to do this, I've actually found that it's easier to install it with this top plate off as well. It gives you some more space to be able to maneuver the screws. So that's gonna be our first step, is removing this top plate. So now I'm gonna remove these screws around the edges. All right, now I've got the screws off, so I can go ahead and remove this top plate. Remember that the ground wire is attached here. Again, you can take it off if you want, but I've always just found it easier to leave it attached and then just set the plate down behind the Wash Fx. So now that we have access to the entire unit, this is when I'm gonna go ahead and remove this tape for the fans and replace the fans back into its original spot. Now the fans are just hanging out inside, so all we have to do is replace them using the screws that we took off earlier. Now here's what the fan looks like once it's back reassembled. All I had to do was just screw in the screws while holding the fan on the back, and it's good to go. Now I'm going to reattach the fan on the other side. And there you go, the fan is reattached on the other side as well. Now that both fans are back in place, I can work on getting the faceplate back. So all we have to do is reattach all the bulbs back into the holes in the correct orientation. The easiest way I found to do this was to first install the bottom lights, then the top lights, followed by the IR sensor at the end. Once we get all the bulbs installed and the IR sensor installed, then we're gonna go around the edges and close the whole thing back up. Okay, so first I had to spend some time getting things oriented in the right way, but now I'm ready to start screwing in. I'm gonna start with the bottom left piece first. Okay, now I've reached the halfway point. I've got the 3 bottom lights installed. Man, this is definitely the hardest part of the whole process. It's taking some time, but the end result's gonna be worth it. Now I'm gonna do the top 3 lights and then the IR sensor. Okay, now it's time to reinstall the IR sensor. You can see it right here. It's gonna go in this spot right over here. The screws for the IR sensor are smaller than the rest of the ones for the faceplate. All right, now with that, we wrap up the hardest part of the process, and that's reattaching all the lights and the IR sensor to the faceplate. Now all we have left is to close the thing up, starting with the top, and then reattaching all these screws here on the edges, and then we'll be all done. Okay, now that I got the top plate reattached, all I have to do is reattach the front plate by screwing in all the edges. Okay, and there you have it. The second Wash Fx is completely done. Here's a closer look at the entire completed thing. We got the fans back on. The back is gonna stay black. The bottom is nice and clean. Now let's test this thing out, make sure it still works. All right, now here we go. Let's plug this thing in and see if it works. All right, awesome. Let's change the colors to one that doesn't blink on the camera. The IR remote is working. There you go, you got a nice blue color right here. Got our UV, got our red. So everything is working great. The screens are working. You can see everything's going good. Let's put on a fade mode. So for some reason on camera it's blinking like that, but that's not happening in real life. Here we go, back to blue. And yeah, this thing is working great. All right, and there you guys have it. Thank you so much for watching my video on how to turn your Chauvet Wash Fx into a white color. Personally, I'm really happy with this result, and I know that with paint, it's probably gonna scuff or chip over time. But the thing is, it's so easy to re-spray paint this thing if you have to. Just tape off the sides that you need to keep covered, and then just spray paint the part that gets scuffed up. Now I can set these on top of white totems or a white Chauvet flex stand, and it can look nice and clean, especially for a wedding. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you gonna try doing this yourself? Or do you think this is just a big waste of time and just keeping the Chauvet Wash Fx black is the best move? Hopefully this video helps someone out there who's interested in turning their Wash Fx white. It is a bit of a process, but it's fun to do, and I'm really happy with the result. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.